right, this is journal page 25. So what you're going to take is yesterday you were given a vocab list, which I don't know if this one's not the right list, I'm sorry. But you're going to take that list and you're going to write it. And yes, it's going to take a little bit of time. Or if you wanted to print it out, it is going to go on page 25. It can either go on the left or the right. We're going to be adding our vocabulary throughout the 6 weeks. This is kind of a little bit longer list, so it may take you a little bit of time, but that is going to be on page 25, your vocab words. All right, page 26, we are going to look at y-intercepts, okay? So we're going to look first at what an equation, in the equation, what is the y-intercept? And I'm going to just title this page y-intercept. And I know we don't normally title the pages, but y-intercepts. So we're going to be look for the unchanging value. The unchanging value. And our equation is y equals 3x plus 5. Okay? This plus 5 is our y-intercept. So here I'm going to put y-intercept equals a positive 5, so I can just keep it as 5. That's going to be where it crosses the y-axis. At the 5, that is my y-intercept. It's always going to be that plus or minus at the end of our problem. Okay, so we're going to put that. The plus or minus in an equation. Alright, and then I want to box that whole thing because we're actually going to divide this into 4s. And next we're going to look at a graph. So y-intercept when I look at an equation is that plus or minus. When I look at a graph, we're going to put look where the line crosses the y-axis. Alright, so I have a graph that we're going to draw by hand. We're only going to look at one quadrant for now. And I'm going to use the lines of my paper to be my grid. Okay, so this is my axis. I'm going to darken it so that it kind of stands out some. And then I'm going to draw a line. And this is when it gets so hard in this class because we're going to put a dot at that at 3. So 1, 2, 3. And we're going to draw a line. Now this is when it's going to get really hard in this class because we are looking at graphs now. And being able to draw the same graph, this is what the class is looking at, just so you know. Sorry. But where it crosses, so my y-intercept here, so y-intercept is 1, 2, 3. Is 3. It actually crosses at 0, 3. Our y-intercept is going to be 3. Alright, and then we're going to look at it in table form. So in equation form, it's that plus or minus. In graph form, it's where it crosses my y-axis, y-intercept, y-axis. Just think about, I don't know if you know anything about football, but when it intercepts, where is it, that interception, it's going to be where it crosses the path of somebody. So this is the y-intercept where it's going to cross the path of our y-axis. So in the table, this is going to actually sound familiar because it's what we just did. Look for the y value where x equals 0. Should sound familiar because it's actually what we just got done looking at. This is my x and y values. 0, 2, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to find where x is 0 and my y-intercept equals 2 because it's what was across from it. So equation, it's the plus or minus. In graph form, it's going to be where it crosses the y-axis. And in table form, it's going to be whatever's across from that 0. All right, written description. We're going to be look for an unchanging one-time value. And underline that one time because it is actually something that is going to only happen one time. So we do have a little verbal description here that we're going to write out. So we have a youth sports team charges a $50 sign-up fee. And then $25 per month. So we're going to be looking for that. What is that one-time value? That thing that's not going to change. And the thing that's not going to change is that $50 sign-up fee. So my y-intercept is 50. So in a table, in an equation, it's at plus or minus. In a graph, it's where it crosses the y-axis. And in the table, it's where it crosses across from 0. And in the description, it's going to be that one-time thing. All right, so I don't know how much room you have at the bottom. You don't need too much, but I'm going to draw a squiggly line. And we're going to look more at equations. Okay, going to look more at equations. So y equals 7x plus 5. My y-intercept here, I'm going to abbreviate y-intercept, is going to be 5 because plus 5. Let's look at another one. Y equals negative 3x minus 4. My y-intercept is going to be minus 4. Always bring that sign with it. Let's look at another one. I'm going to try to trick y'all here. Ooh, there is no plus there. So what does that mean, my y-intercept? Does that mean there's no y-intercept? No, remember, I can have an imaginary plus 0 added to the end, which tells me my y-intercept would be 0. Let's do one more. If you have to come over to the side, you can come over to the side. (3x plus 1/2). My y-intercept is 1/2. So whatever is that plus. Now don't get in this thought of it's what's at the end, because that's not always true. It's whatever is with that plus or minus. All right, we're going to slide to the left. Slide to the left. And we're going to look at some example of some graphs. Now this is when it's going to get really tricky. Because unless you are going to print these graphs out, which I will have them available to you, you're going to have to draw them. So, I'm going to draw. If you have some graph paper, and you want to cut a piece of that off and glue it in, that's fine. So that's my y and x axis. And I'm going to draw I'm going to draw some lines. I'm going to do on the line and between the line. Now this is going to take a lot longer than it will take my in-class people because I do have these graphs printed for them, and I am sorry because I don't know how else to get these to you. If at any point you say, you know what, Miss Joel, I would really like to have copies of this, just let me know and I will send them to the front, and you can come by, or your parents, because you can't drive, can come by at any point and pick it up. Alright, I'm going to pause this video while I finish drawing this. I want you to pause it also, and I want you to push play when you're done drawing a grid. Alright, so hopefully you have your first grid drawn, and I want you to put a dot through the center, and I want you to draw a line that goes through the origin. And that's my graph. Okay, so we're going to look at our y-intercept. So our y-intercept is when it crosses the y-axis. So here's my y-axis, and here's where it crossed. So it crossed at the 0. So my y-intercept for this first graph is 0. Alright, we're going to draw another grid, or if you have graph paper that you can cut and glue here, then do that. I'll pause the video and finish drawing mine. I want you to pause the video, and I want you to draw yours, just like we drew the last one. Alright, there's my next grid. You'll also notice that I consider myself pretty good at drawing straight lines. So if you are not, I encourage you to use a ruler for this. I probably should have used a ruler because even though my lines are decently straight, it's still kind of messy. So this one, I want you to put a dot. I want you to start at the origin, and I want you to go up 4 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want you to put a dot. Okay. And I want you to draw a line going this direction that goes through that dot. I don't care what angle it is. It doesn't matter for this lesson. Alright, so we're going to be looking. Where did it cross that y-axis? It crossed at the 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's where we put it. So our y-intercept is 4. Now, we're not going to draw anymore. You are going to not, unless you just want the last two, I'm just going to show you those two. I'm not going to require you to have more than 2, just because that's going to take forever to draw those. But here's another graph, and if you see, here's my y-axis. It crossed at the -2. And then we have this graph, and it crossed my y-axis at the 1, 2, +2. Okay, so that is y-intercept of a graph. Alright, now let's look at some tables. So I'm going to draw a squiggly line. And let's look at some tables. Alright, so to find our y-intercept, we are going to look for our x where it's 0. So there's my x when it's 0, and what my y is with it. So my y-intercept for this graph, for this table, is 5. Let's look at another table. Sometimes it's not as pretty as that, but we'll do another pretty one just so you can see. Alright, so I'm going to look for where my x is 0. So there's my x is 0. What is with my x is 0? 15. So my y-intercept is 15. Let's look at one that's a little bit trickier. They don't always get too tricky, and especially since we've already kind of looked at an example like this. All right, so I can see in this table, I don't have an x of 0. And so some of you hopefully have already thought in your head, if it doesn't have the x of 0, then I'm probably going to need to work to find it out. And that's right. So these are going by 2's. So sorry. At the end of the day, every day I'm coughing just a little bit. I think my throat gets dry. So these are going by 2's. So 8 minus 2 is 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, so I had to do 2 leaps. So these are going by 3's. So if I look at 9 minus 3 is 6. 6 minus 3 is 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Now, some of my in-class kids have been seeing that y is 0, and then they've been putting, oh, it must be a 2. But remember, I'm looking at where my x is 0 and what's partnered up with it. And so my y-intercept is a negative 3. All right, let's look at another example. Hopefully you have some room for a couple more examples. This is another one of those situations that kind of has been, my in-class students have kind of been confused by it. So let's see if y'all get confused by it also. Or it might be something that confuses y'all. So these are going by 1's. Easy to see. 3, 2, 1. Right before it will be my 0. But these are going by 2, but they're a little bit reversed. I'm doing 8 plus 2 will give me 10 when I go this direction. So 10 plus 2. So before this will be a 14. It's not going to go back down to a 10. So it was just working backwards. I've realized some of my students have gotten the habit of thinking they're going to have to subtract every time, and that's not always the case. So my y-intercept here is, sorry. And I do abbreviate y-intercept, y-int. You do not have to. This is your notes. So you are welcome to write out the whole word if you want. It's not going to offend me at all. Let's look at one more example because I know y'all have to write your vocab also if you didn't do it yesterday. I know some of you went ahead and did it. Let's see. Let's do a little bit different. -5, -4, -3, -2, -1. I told you, cough is just... I have really bad allergies for those of you that cared. Alright, so if I notice, if I go this direction, I'm not going to get to a 0. This is going to take me deeper into my negatives. So actually, I'm going to be going this way. Look, this is going to take me -5, -4, -3, -2, -1. Then I'm going to hit my 0. So I'm going to actually extend my graph, my table, at the end rather than going backwards. Now, this is a rare thing. We don't normally see it this way, but I wanted you to see it in case it showed up. So +2, +2, +2, +2, so it's going to be 16. So I have a y-intercept of 16. So to recap this lesson, for a table, I'm going to look at where x is 0, and whatever my y is, that's my y-intercept. When I'm looking at my graph, wherever it crosses that y-axis, that's going to be my y-intercept. It doesn't matter which direction my graph is going, as long as wherever it crosses that y-axis, and it's not going to cross in two places because it's linear, it makes a line. And when I'm looking at equations, I'm going to be looking for that plus or minus. All right. As always, if you have questions, email me. It's easier for me to see the email than it is for me to see it on Teams. So please just let me know if you have any questions, any issues, or don't understand. All right.